Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 20. Today, most of our time will be spent around the factory adjacent sections of the main bus. Remember how I wanted to make the pillars uniform? Well, we will do that in this episode. I am fairly sure it will be pretty boring, but I simply couldn't bear leaving the pillars in the state of chaos any longer. But, we will only do that after we do some other smaller jobs around the island. I didn't want to do such a long and boring task at the start. And even after this restructuring, I will still be unsatisfied with the result, and might still end up making small adjustments here and there. The other big thing we are dealing with today are the retaining walls in the other mines. We won't be building them, just placing the ghost images, so we can get going on them in the next video. Before we get started, if this is not your first video from this channel, you already know what to expect. If you want to be kept up to date, please consider subscribing, and if you like what you see, leaving a like will also help letting me know what to focus on. But enough talking, let's get into it. Before we do anything, let's take a look around the island. The diesel stockpile is slowly filling up. We might be able to do the new refinery in the next episode. And the coal mine is hard at work on the next level down. We should really start investing in the world map mines. I suspect we will need them soon. And speaking of mines, let's set up the final designations for the copper. We have a bit of extra ore we can dig up after the visible parts of the deposit. In fact, we have a lot hidden under the dirt layer, but we already built over a lot of it, so we can only do so much at this point. I also told most of the excavators to focus on dirt, so we can get this part of the job out of the way real quick. We have a large container of crushed ores already, so a momentary mining outage won't really impact things around the island. I thought it was also time to set up the Tier 4 construction parts factories. We won't see much use for them in the near future, but we might as well be prepared. As it turns out, we need the Tier 3 factories to make them, so we need to replace the Tier 2s we copied over from the original array. And we just got the next tier of research unlocked. We will deal with that when we are doing the factory bus. We still have some technologies left in the current level. We should also tell the new factories not to accept deliveries from trucks. Leave that to the input warehouses to deal with. Now that the population numbers settled down a bit, let's check the food consumption in town, and make sure we are making enough in the greenhouses to satisfy the demand. We need 14.1 coming out of each veggie farm per minute. That means we need to use a bit more fertilizers. Potatoes should still be fine. We are growing 10 in each farm, and only need 28 per minute in total. We are making a lot of biodiesel from those taters. And just for good measure, I also increased the fertility in the corn greenhouses. Maybe I should have checked in the production graphs, but I kind of forgot to do it. That crop is not as straightforward as the other two, since it has two separate consumers, not just the people in the settlement. I also decided to increase the limestone quarry a little. While we need very little of it, we were still getting close to exhausting the old mining designations. We can also get started on the iron mine retaining walls. We are almost done shaving off the topmost layer, so we should start planning for the future. Also, I don't know why, but this particular recording has some nasty static in the audio track. Sadly, it is also present in the raw video files, so not much I can do about it. Thankfully, it is only present around places where we have a constant low frequency hum going on, like here at the iron smelters. The thing is, I specifically set OBS to only record the game audio with an application-specific capturing add-on, so it's not some kind of microphone interference. It's just a corrupted recording. But again, it is only present around certain places on the island, and we won't spend much time there anyway, so let's just get through it. The audio was pretty much okay everywhere else, so I didn't want to just throw it out completely. Okay, I think we can leave the iron mine walls at this for now. We still have some work left to do, but it's getting there. Also, the mine is getting close to running out of mineable designations, so how about we go ahead and set up the next stage, so we will only need to reset the operational area for the tower when the time comes. Nice. We have some tier 4 construction parts made already. I think the first thing we will build with them will be the new research labs. Well, I think it's time to get started. The rest of the episode will be centered around belts pretty much exclusively. We will do a bit of reorganization in the factory district too, but the main focus will be on the belts. As you can see, This is a pretty drastic rebuilding. Good thing we have trucks to take care of the internal deliveries until we sort everything out again. I think it's time to upgrade the vehicle parts factories to the new belt layout. I've been neglecting them for quite a while. I forgot that we need to rebuild the factories with spacing for a second, but I'll notice it once the belts don't want to line up correctly. I also made a mistake here. We already have the Tier 1 factories built correctly, but I still ended up building a second set. At least I managed to make sure that the ratios are correct this time, so once I discover the error, and delete the old array, we will end up with a perfectly balanced setup. With the vehicle parts taken care of, how about we do the lab equipments next? We have 2 laboratories right now, so we will need 2 factories making the stuff at least. With that in mind, we can plan the arrays a bit more efficiently this time around. And since we don't really have the room needed at the other end, we should build the factories here. One factory will give us 48 units of Tier 1s per minute. To use all of them, we will need 2 to make the Tier 2s, and another 2 to make the Tier 3s. And that should give us the perfect balance we need. And if all goes well, we should be making enough equipment to satisfy the demand of 3 labs, so we might end up building a third one. You know, maybe we should have the previous tier input warehouses in the middle. That will ensure that the incoming belts are on level 2. Not really important, but it will make the internal distribution a tiny bit more organized, since we need to run the belts between arrays on level 2 anyway. Once we are done with the last tech, we will upgrade the labs, but I don't see any point doing it before that. I seriously considered changing the order of the warehouses at the construction parts factories too. And ultimately decided to do it. It won't take long, so might as well. I deleted the belts too, since they were already saturated with stuff. If we only switched out the warehouses, we would need to ask the trucks to empty out the belts one by one, so I just opted for a complete rebuild instead. We should also set the food belts to be uniformly elevated. Their chaotic ramps were one of the reasons why I decided to pull the trigger on this particular project. And here's the thing that I am seriously considering changing in the next episode. Right now, we are routing the belts that go between arrays onto the main bus. Now that I think about it, it's pretty inefficient. What I consider doing instead, is routing the belts in the other directions, and deal with the internal distribution on the other side, where the copper mine is. Did you notice how I didn't need to change elevation as I turned the belt toward the final warehouse? That is the entire reason why I changed the order of the storages. So I don't have to make that elevation change. Yeah. I need help. Well, since I tried to keep these belts at the same level as long as I could, I decided to route the third one behind the second one, instead of going back to the same lane as the first one. Now, it is time to rebuild the actual main bus lines. And this time, we will make sure to use a proper, equal spacing for all the lines, so the pillars all line up perfectly. There were points where I adhered to those internal belts for pillar placement, but after a while, I just left a gap that was too tile wide between pillars. This is another thing that I will likely end up revisiting later, so it is even more uniform. And just to be extra sure we are making things as perfectly aligned as possible, we won't rely on placing each pillar individually. We will just copy-paste the whole thing, and that should take care of everything. Also, don't worry about the water pipe right now. We will deal with that in an upcoming episode. Looking at those pillars, I feel better already. By the way, I don't think we need to have electronics and mechanical parts on the main bus. We can safely use internal distribution for those too, so they will likely end up the same way as the other belts that are moving stuff between factory arrays. But I only made that decision after the recording was over, so for now they will just use the bus. Also, you might have noticed that I purposefully build the merging and splitting nodes right on top of existing pillars. I think it's pretty obvious why I did that. Another reason why I will end up moving the electronics and mechanical parts to the internal belts is this last ugly turn toward the Tier 2 construction parts. The main bus should be reserved for raw materials, and deal with internal distribution away from it. And I keep trying to make the pillar spacing above output belts be spaced out perfectly, so they overlap with emerging nodes, but I will give up on that in a bit. And we are out of Unity. A bit of a shame, but we are also out of construction parts anyway, so we just leave the rest of the construction to the trucks. Damn, that water pipe is in the way. The even pillar placement got disturbed here. Good thing we will only need to rebuild small sections to make it all perfectly uniform again. Anyways, let's rebuild the water pipes, and get back to the matter at hand. And that small imperfection in the pillar placement is what made me abandon this part of the aesthetic reorganization. We will just build these belts as they are, and not worry about these pillars too much. And again, we need to duck under one of the internal distribution belts. We really need to move them to the other side. And this is where I noticed that rebuilding the Tier 1 vehicle parts was completely unnecessary. At least we managed to free up a row for some other factory later. Maybe for the Tier 2 electronics. We have the Tier 1s right next to it, so it just might be exactly what we needed. Well, I'm getting a bit exhausted by now. But, all these neatly arranged pillars make me feel that it was all worth it in the end. Things look a lot more organized now. We just need to deal with the water pipe, and it will all be perfect. In the meantime, the iron mine finished with the current designations, so we can reset the operational area to the new place. Plus, we can finish placing the last of the retaining walls around this area. Good. The work is underway at the last remaining surface level designations, and once those are done, we can start digging downward. But, we still need to deal with the ramp leading into the pit. For now, I just built some walls around the existing ramps, but I suspect that we will end up building something a bit more space efficient. And I think this is pretty much it for today. I know, that second half with all the belts was a bit boring, but I really wanted to get it done. In the next one, I think we will do those internal factory belts, and take electronics and mechanical parts off the main bus. I can only hope that we have enough room on the other side to accommodate all those extra belts, but I feel that we should do it either way. And this is where that more space-efficient belt system will come in handy. We managed to save a tile or two in the little alleyways between the factory arrays, so we can use that extra space to move the outputs toward the copper mine. Before, we only had a 3-tile wide space, which was just barely enough for trucks to get around. Now we have more room, so might as well take advantage of it. Also, I suspect that the diesel stockpile should be getting pretty full at this point, so we should be able to get started on the refinery rebuilding efforts. Right now, it is pretty boxed in with all those secondary processing facilities, and the slow speed on the filling of those tanks makes it obvious that we are getting close to the limits of our fuel production, so it is ready for expansion. Anyways, if you haven't done it already, I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel, and leaving a like would also let me know that this video was worth making. If you feel that it was good enough, and you can afford it, please consider going to my Ko-fi page, which you can find in the description, and donate an amount that you feel is appropriate. And if you did like what you've seen, there should be links to some of my other videos and playlists on the screen. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.